Namaste. So today I will actually be talking about the aspect of transcending the mind. Now, this is an important topic for meditators and for those who are interested in contemplation, especially the non dual contemplation, because transcending the mind does not just mean the yogic kind of meditation wherein we quieten the mind and reach the state of stillness, as mentioned in the Yoga Sutra, as chitta vritti nirodha, that cessation of the thought fluctuations of the mind. That is the highest stage as considered from a yogic approach. While that is important, and if those who are able to do that can actually use that kind of skill to then be able to use the mind in other ways. So, so today I'm going to talk about transcending the mind, based mostly on the teachings of Ramana Maharshi. So in this kind of teaching, we will use some attributes of how it is taught in the Ramana Maharshi's teachings, and from there we actually can make use of how to work with the mind itself. So let me start by giving you a couple of comparisons. I talked a little bit about the yogic approach of quietening the mind. Now, that alone has some advantage, but it is not that ultimate stage has pointed out in the non-dual teachings. So, when we talk about the non-dual teachings, the the aspect of being aware of the mind is also not considered the highest point. And let me explain what that aspect is. Now, we can actually become aware of our thoughts. We can become aware of our mental state. We can also become aware of our general feelings as such. Now, by itself, these are certain abilities which help us to kind of turn inward, as they say. So, to give you a better example of that, if I am if I'm using a certain kind of colored glasses, everything I see will actually reflect that color, such as maybe if it's yellow or red, it'll everything I see will have a tinge of that. So we take if between the world and my eyes, there's a glasses, and the nature of the glasses will actually the color of the glasses will taint what I see. That same approach is actually done to understand the mind. So the mind is considered as the filter in between me, the seer, and then the world that is perceived. So when we use an approach like that, it is almost like how we have at some point to kind of turn the glasses and look at that glasses. Like for example, I have a glass which turns dark with the sunlight. It's called transition lenses or photochromic lenses. So for me to become aware of the nature of the glasses, all I have to do is to turn and look at the glasses, and from there, I can see whether it's dark or whether what shade it is, and and that would again be based on the impact of the sunlight. A very simple way of explaining this, or rather, the phrase that best, the word that best explains is this aspect of mindfulness, wherein we are aware of our mental state, and based on its interaction with the world, we keep a tab on the mind. Now, that although is a very profound ability by itself, it is not adequate. because what Ramana Maharshi is actually talking about is something much deeper. So that what Ramana Maharshi is talking about is explained best in one of his books called Upadesha Sara. In Upadesha Sara, what there is kind of he has written a number of verses in the book called Upadesha Sara, and almost half of that book he talks about all the different kinds of sadhanas and different kinds of practices, such as the margas, which is called as the bhakti yoga, um, dhyana yoga, and karma yoga. And then somewhere halfway through that, Ramana Maharshi actually talks about the jnana yoga. He comes to that point of jnana yoga, the path of knowledge. And here he explains this with one of the very key verse, and this verse is uh, in halfway through one of the first verses of that Jnana Yoga portion. He says this thing of as we inquire into what is mind, we realize that there is nothing real called the mind. So, and he says this is the direct path. In Sanskrit, that verse goes something like this: Manasam tu kim margane krite, naiva manasam marga arjavat. So that ability to kind of question and look into what is mind is one of the first steps in the path of the knowledge as well. So when we can actually inquire into what is mind, or rather, even better is to look at like where exactly is the mind, because we can experience objects, we can experience even have an idea of seeing our body, but we don't quite experience our mind. We don't kind of directly perceive our mind itself. So when we investigate into this, when we contemplate on this, we actually see that reality that we give to this aspect of that mind kind of slowly starts loosening up. In other words, like if you look at the world, there is a certain objectivity. We can give it what is called as a nama rupa. We can linguistically say that this is the computer, this is my pen, this is my phone. So we can linguistically give a name to each object that we see. And there's also a shape and color which gives it the rupa or the form. But with the mind, it's very hard to come to that point where we can actually distinctively say that this has a certain name, this has a certain form. So this is one of the first steps. This is really one of the first steps to break this, what is called the dualistic perception of me, the subject, or the mind being here, and the world being there, or the object being there. So that investigation is actually the first step in trying to see this ability of us to see, to look into that, to look into where the mind is, or what is the mind, or where is the mind. So then the next step that Ramana Maharshi talks about is, he says, now, when we really consider the mind, what is the mind? He says that the thoughts are actually what make up the mind. And thoughts, he says, are of two kinds. One is what is called as the idam vritti, which is the object thought. And the other one is called aham vritti, which can be called as a subject thought. And it can also be called as this thought and I thought. So if you look at it from that point, then what he's asking us to do is like, when we investigate into this nature of that mind itself, we actually find that the mind is nothing but that subject. It is that subject thought which always stays. And because I have the subjectivity, I perceive the world of objectivity. And like, in other words, what we may also call as mind and matter. If there is matter, then there must be a mind, and if there is a mind, then there is a perception of matter. So this kind of dualistic approach, is kind of can be broken down and understood better when we kind of look into what is mind and what is the world. So this is the second step in this contemplation. Now, the third step in this contemplation that Ramana Maharshi gives us, and this is the essence of what he's here, of most of his teachings, or what is, in a nutshell, he calls it as the "Who Am I" teachings, is he says, from where does this subjectivity arise? For one who inquires into the subjectivity, then he says, when we really look into where exactly is the subjectivity, what exactly is the subjectivity, he says the sense of having that subjectivity suddenly drops. And he says that is the path of self-inquiry. In Sanskrit, he says like ahamayam kuto bhavati chinvataha aipatatyaham nija vicharanam. So what he's was actually saying is that when we inquire into who am I or where am I, then at that point, that sense of that mind we had has the subject will also drop. And at that point, this whole dualistic perception of the mind and the matter, or the me and the world, the I thought and this thought, they will all drop, because the root of that I thought is actually that that self, as he calls, or who am I. So he doesn't actually talk about what this thing is, which is there when the mind drops. But the dropping of that mind can actually happen pretty fast, even for a simple practitioner. So you don't need to be a highly experienced meditator or contemplative for you to have a direct experiential feel of this nature of seeing. So if I were to put it this way, in this aspect of what I mentioned earlier about looking the mind, or even this chitta vritti nirodha of yoga approach, they all need some practice and training. While self-inquiry also does need some practice and training, but we can very quickly arrive at that root of that self-inquiry. And so for you to practice this self-inquiry, or to start this practice of self-inquiry, it is very simple. It is like, as Ramana Maharshi has actually already given in this 3 steps, it's a very simple approach of starting with the first approach, to kind of admit that there is a sense of seeing I have all the time. And so when you any thought comes to you, or you see any object, and if you even try to meditate for a few minutes, you will see that there will be a swarm of thoughts that will come into you. Now at that point, instead of fighting the thoughts or making those thoughts go away, a very simple approach is actually to stop and look at, where am I experiencing this thought? So there has to be some kind of source, or some kind of a central entity, right, where the thoughts are residing in. So at least we have such a perception. We have this feeling that there is a central mind, or a central entity, where all these thoughts come and go. Now, when we try to look at that, so where is this thoughts coming from? What is the source of this thoughts? Where is this thought abiding? Or where is this thoughts like disappearing from? Then at that point, we actually try to see that this thing of this mind, or the source of that thought, it's very hard to nail down. And instead of getting lost or confused about that, if you just rest in that state, if you just rest in that sense of not being able to grasp at the source of the thoughts, the location of the thoughts, then you quickly kind of see that the sense of I-ness or me-ness, which is required for the thought to exist, also drops away. So this is actually the path of self-inquiry, because one way to look at it was you were trying to look at the mind. The other way to look at it is actually to look at that sense of me-ness, that sense of I-ness that we always have. So we constantly carry with us the sense of I-ness or me-ness. So when you try to look within to the source of this mind or this thought, the sense of I-ness and me-ness kind of drops for a while. And for some people, they get confused by that. But actually, that's the place where you want to abide. And if you just rest in that, you will feel a sense of some kind of a different, um, I would say, different awareness, which is beyond the subject object awareness that we are so used to. So let us, for a few minutes, I'm going to guide that. It's a very short exercise, but you can actually just start, take a couple of deep breaths and just relax. So now one of the first steps we do after you relax and exhale your breath is you have a constant sense of thought, right? So if whatever thoughts you might feel, just try to look for that subjectivity of that thought. So that is the first step. Like, where is this mind where these thoughts come from? Try to look for that source of the thoughts. Or another approach, if you are finding it hard, because sometimes when you try to look for thoughts, you'll feel that you have no thoughts. So another way to look for it, try to look for the sense of I-ness or me-ness that you feel with you. Because there has to be a sense of subjectivity, no matter what we are, where we are, which allows us to experience this world. So try to look for the sense of subjectivity or this sense of self or me-ness, I, the sense of feeling of I. Now, if you can find a sense of tangible sense of I-ness, then you can kind of try to analyze it a little bit more and ask yourself some questions such as, where do you feel that? Or what is the source of that? Or where does it abide? Where do you, where in your body or in your mind that you actually feel it the most? And you see if you can break it down further. Is it your sense of I as a body or I as a mind? So you can actually analyze that a little further as well. If not, if you're looking for that source of that thought, then try to see that where is this thought? What is that color or what is that form? What is the name you can give to the sense of the mind or the source of the thought, the place of the resting place of the thought? So just try to see if you can analyze it a couple of minutes. If you experience any gap or any confusion at this point, just rest with that and see if you can stay with that sense of not having a clear, objective sense of this experience. And then you can just rest, relax, and just bring your awareness back here to the present moment, to your body, to your surroundings, and just stay with that awareness for a minute. without getting lost into what you perceive. Just stay with that sense of awareness. Allow whatever thoughts to come in and just remain with that. Now you can take a couple of deep breaths and just relax. So this, I've not gone deep, I've not gone through the full steps of meditation as in my other guided practices, because I have gone directly to that aspect of self inquiry, which I was teaching today. But you can precede this by doing some pranayama and some just some kind of focusing the mind on some object or some mantra or something, and then launch on to self inquiry, because that way it will help you to have a little bit better focus of the mind on the self inquiry itself. So this, in a nutshell, is the path of self inquiry as taught by Ramana Maharshi. And I will try to, in subsequent sessions, take up a few other aspects, a few other steps that Ramana Maharshi mentions, especially from the book Upadesha, and try to use those to give us a whole integrated view on how to come to this aspect of self inquiry. But really, the starting point is this, where you start questioning the mind, start questioning that sense of self, or start questioning, or break it down into the subjective, objective experiences of the world. And when you kind of get into that kind of contemplation, it doesn't need to be a formal sitting meditation. Whenever you have a few minutes, you can sit down and you can also inquire. Or whenever you're troubled from thoughts, or when you're having too many thoughts, you can kind of see to whom are these thoughts occurring, because there is some subjectivity that is experiencing these thoughts, right? So whatever nature of the thoughts, you can transform all of them. So this is the most transformational practice. This is the more highest practice in all the contemplative practices that at least I have come across and has endorsed by many. But it is not easy. It takes some more than, I would say. It is not so much that you keep practicing and becomes more skilled at it. It is better understanding that practice. So even this act of listening, and if possible, you can re-listen to this video a few times. But practice it during the day whenever you get opportunities. Use your thoughts in your daily life and emotions in your daily life, and use them as an opportunity for self-inquiry. And then you'll see how quickly they transform, and how quickly you come to the deeper awareness of your own true nature. So with that, I offer um, my prayers to Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi, and I wish you the best in trying out his approach for the direct path of self-inquiry. Om Namo Bhagavate Ramanaya.